Warning for Indian economy is coming from all corners now after IMF or International Monetary Fund's raising of red flag on Indian economy. Multilateral aid agency World Bank has issued warning for India's economy. World Bank has said the GDP of India may slow from 8.6% in 2015 to 7% in 2017 because of disruptions caused by demonetisation and the GST. The World Bank has issued warning on subdued private investment in India, saying internal bottlenecks could put downside pressures on India's potential growth. The IMF or International Monetary Fund had yesterday lowered India's growth projection to 6.7% in 2017, 0.5 percentage points less than its previous two forecasts and slower than China's 6.8%. India's economic momentum has been affected by disruptions from demonetisation undertaken last year and uncertainties around goods and services tax or GST. Also, a slowdown in India's growth rate has dragged down overall growth rate of South Asia, and Southeast Asia's growth rate has fallen to second place after East Asia and the Pacific. And in signs of mounting worries for Indian financial sector, country's bad loans have hit a record high of 9.5 lakh crore rupees at the end of June 2017. Now, according to latest data available, World Bank non-performing loans, the data, India's loan defaults were at staggering 9.2% of total gross loans in 2016. So, India's bad debt loan mess is becoming murkier. The bad debt loans were at record high this year. The bad loans had hit a record high of $146 billion. And the power, steel, road, infra and textiles are the biggest loan defaulters. Indian loan defaults are at 9.2% of gross loans in 2016. And the loan defaults were at second highest in Asia. The slow revenue growth and high interest rates are behind bad loans accumulating in Indian economy, and India has just 2.67% of bad loans in 2011. The bad loans in India are second highest in Asia after Pakistan, that stood at 11.3%. A loan becomes non-performing asset or NPA or bad when a borrower stops repaying either the principal amount or the interest. In India, power, steel, road, infrastructure and textile sectors are the biggest loan defaulters of state-owned banks. Also, India's bad loans have surged drastically in the past 6 years. In 2011, India had just 2.67% of bad loans, which surged to 5.88% in 2015. The sharpest rise came in 2016, when the bad loans shot up to 9.18%. The main contributors for India's bad debt mess are slower revenue growth and higher interest rates, leading to bad debts piling up at banks. Now, according to Reserve Bank of India data, new loans grew at just about 5% in the year to March, the lowest growth rate in more than 6 decades. Several banks have already cut back their loan books to conserve capital. Now, Fitch Ratings estimates Indian banks will need $865 billion of additional capital by March 2019 to meet Basel III global banking rules. And staying with India news, the newly constituted Economic Advisory Council or PMEAC to the Prime Minister has held its first meeting at Niti Aayog in Delhi today. The council has picked 10 issues to initially work after today's meeting, and there is a consensus that has been formed among PMEAC members with regard to growth slowdown. PMEAC members will also examine the causes of current slowdown. Going forward, the council will have more informal meetings with stakeholders going forward, and the next meeting of PMEAC will take place next month. There was the first, we can say, that meeting that happened, and PMEAC took stock of the economy as far as Indian economy was concerned. The steps were taken, concerns were raised, and now they are going to pick up 10 issues as far as talking about issues are concerned, and they will work on those 10 issues. So PMEAC had held its first meeting today. Next month, there will be one more meeting going forward. Their council will focus on 10 issues, the chairman of council, Vivek Debroy, has said. Then PMEC held first meeting today. This is Prime Minister's economy team that was formed around 2 weeks back. So it was first meeting from Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. The council has decided to focus on 10 issues going forward. That was the first meeting that took place today. Then PM-EAC meeting will happen in November, and they will be working on monetary policy and fiscal total initiatives going forward as well. And in signs of major troubles for global MNCs, Boeing, Toyota and Nissan and other big companies are scrambling to check the safety of their products after it emerged they had been supplied with falsely certified metal, which is steel, from Kobe Steel, in a deepening scandal that has dealt a fresh blow to confidence in industry quality controls in Japan. Scandal is the latest in a string of scandals highlighting wider concerns about inspection and quality control in Japan, from wobbly building pilings at the construction arm of Asahi Kasei to overstated fuel economy at Mitsubishi Motors. The Kobe Steel news came just days after Japanese car maker Nissan was forced to recall about 1.2 million cars that were inspected by unauthorized technicians. Other companies were affected by Kobe Steel as well, and they include Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Kawasaki Heavy Industries, IHI, Honda, Mazda and Subaru. Kobe Steel said it had no evidence of any safety concerns as a result of fraudulent certification. And the most powerful business lobby in the US has accused US President Donald Trump of sabotaging talks aimed at modernizing NAFTA. As business leaders gather in Washington for fresh trade dialogues, the negotiations to update 23-year-old North American Free Trade Agreement on NAFTA have turned increasingly acrimonious. Speaking in Mexico City, President of American Chamber of Commerce Thomas Donohoe said some US proposals on NAFTA would undermine $1 trillion annual trilateral trade. He also said the threat to NAFTA is a threat to the US national security. But President Trump has again repeated his threat to scrap the deal. Trump's reservations about NAFTA stems from the trade deficit with Mexico, which he termed unfair to the US. Earlier, Mexico warned US about ending NAFTA trade deal.
Threat to North American free trade and to the North American Free Trade Agreement is a threat to our partnership, to our shared economic vibrancy, and clearly the national security and safety of all three nations. So I want to be abundantly clear that the U.S. business community will stand up for an important agreement that makes North America stronger and more prosperous. I also want to be clear that the U.S. business community is committed to Mexico itself, and no matter what happens, we're not going anywhere.
News from Korea, where South Korean electronics giant and the largest maker of memory chips in the world, Samsung Electronics, is expected to forecast a record third-quarter profit on Friday, thanks to the strong market for memory chips. The mobile earnings are also bouncing back from last year's withdrawal of Note 7 that proved costly for Samsung. The world's biggest maker of memory chips and mobile phones, Samsung has been the chief beneficiary of booming semiconductor market as mobile devices and servers demand ever greater processing power. Analysts say the brisk sales of latest Galaxy Note 8 smartphone launched in mid-September also are likely to further boost its performance. So Samsung's path to profitability, and Samsung, the largest chip maker and mobile maker in the whole world, it expects third quarter profits to boost on Friday when it will announce the results. The profit will jump on demand for memory chips. The mobile earnings will bounce back from last year as well, giving a boost to Samsung profits. The brisk sales of Galaxy Note 8 smartphone will boost profits of Samsung as well. The Samsung profits will boost on strong global demand for DRAM chips that will continue to outpace supply in 2018, while demand for NAND chips succeeded supply for 6 straight quarters as of last month. And with the UK leaving the European Union, London is now seeking higher investments from Indians. The Mayor of London City, Sadiq Khan, will visit India later this year as part of his drive to woo Indian investors. He will visit Mumbai, Delhi and Amritsar as part of his trip. The Khan will leave for Pakistan after ending his trip to India. Lahore, Islamabad and Karachi in Pakistan are on his itinerary. According to reports, Indian companies invest more in UK than the rest of Europe combined. London Mayor is expected to tell Indian companies that his country is open to investments despite Brexit. And European Union President Donald Tusk has issued a stern warning to Britain, saying bloc may rethink whether a Brexit deal is possible if there is no progress towards trade talks by December. Tusk said Brussels was still working towards a deal, despite British Prime Minister Theresa May's claims that her government is making preparations in a case there is no accord when Britain leaves the European Union in March 2019. Addressing the House of Commons on Monday, PM May had said real and tangible progress has been made in the Brexit talks. The Prime Minister also confirmed that Britain would remain subject to the rulings of European Court of Justice during the 2-year transition period. Now, Britain and the European Union will hold a 5th round of Brexit divorce negotiations later this week. The European Union insists on the progress of Britain's Brexit bill and the rights of 3 million citizens living in the UK. Earlier on Monday, EU's chief Brexit negotiator Michael Barnier said he had constructively talks regarding divorce proceedings with his British counterpart David Davis. Asked if the ball was in EU's court, Barnier replied that Brexit is not a ball game. Meanwhile, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said Brexit is a developing disaster, despite PM May's remarks that the doomsayers will be proved wrong. Now, Sturgeon said the process of leaving the EU had left the UK in chaos. She added that case of Scottish referendum was getting stronger by the day as a result of Britain's decision to leave the EU. However, she added that she would not set a specific date for a referendum until there was greater clarity on Brexit.
As I have always said, Scotland should have the right to choose our future when the terms of Brexit are clear. We have a mandate to give people that choice, and that mandate was won fairly and squarely.
And UK's new race disparity audit report places Indians as the highest skilled compared to all other minorities in the country. The audit report commissioned by PM May found that students from an Indian background showed high performance rate of all other communities. Now, according to the report, over 1 in 10 were in manager, director and senior official roles, and over 3 in 10 were in professional occupations. Now, overall, the audit highlights race disparities across UK's school, courts and workplaces. PM May, in response to the report, said, and I quote, "People who have lived with discrimination don't need a government audit to make them aware of scale of challenge. But this audit means for society as a whole, for government, for our public services, there is nowhere to hide. These issues are now out in the open and the message is very simple. If these disparities cannot be explained, then they must be changed." I end quote. And staying with the global news, low fuel prices, increased purchasing power has contributed to rise in global passengers last year. The global air travel demand surged 7% last year to 3.8 billion passengers, over 2015, with carriers from Asia Pacific region accounting for more than 1/3 of total market share. So global air travel demand has gone up. Demand is up 7% to 3.8 billion passengers. Airlines have added 242 million more passengers last year, and total passengers have jumped to 3.8 billion in 2016. The total passengers were 3.6 billion in 2015, and there's a small jump from 2015 to 2016. Asia Pacific carriers, they carried 1.3 billion passengers so far, and APAC airlines have registered 11.3% growth. Around 810 million passengers, they travelled on US passports last year. And let's go back to one of the problems facing Indian economy. The problem is that now after World Bank, IMF, they are forecasting lower growth for India. Why is it happening, or what is the problem with Indian economy? What are the ways to revive Indian economy? We are joined by economist Brinda Jagirdar from Mumbai on more. Thank you for talking to us, and we would like to first of all talk to you about the problems being faced by Indian economy, World Bank, IMF. What is the solution over there?
The World Bank and IMF both have clearly said that the problem that the Indian economy is really in good shape, robust, growth is robust, and the macro fundamentals are very sound. What they have raised concern about is investment slowing down. Now, because it's not as if there is some major problem in the economy, what they've said is that what needs to be done is debottlenecking. Once investment picks up, then economic growth will be back on track, and they expect growth going forward to be 7.4, 7.7% in the next 2 years. So growth is really picking up, the fundamentals are in place. What is required is really for investment to pick up. Now, why is investment not picking up? Mainly private investment, because the private sector is highly over leveraged already, and there is also the problem of twin balance sheet, as the private sector, the corporates have a weak balance sheets, corporate earnings are weak, as well as the banks. They are not in a position to lend because of high NPAs, and their balance sheets are weak. So once we set these problems in place, then really India's growth is on track. And as the World Bank and IMF both have said, GST really is only a temporary disruptor. In the long term, the GST is going to have a very, very positive impact on the economy. Growth will be positive, and the Indian economy will see a boost to growth coming from the ease of doing business, from GST, and from all the reforms that are being put in place. So it's a question of time, it's a question of lag. Both the World Bank and the IMF are very positive on the Indian economy. They continue to say that India is engaging in a bigger way with the global economy. India's fundamentals are strong, but the corrections need to be made, and the biggest correction is in investment. Now let's see, because on the consumption side, rural consumption, rural wages are higher, so consumption, urban consumption is
I would like to interrupt
strong.
you here just to ask you
on the investment side which really hasn't picked up.
I would like to ask you one thing, that now a report has also come saying that India's bad debt problem is becoming murkier and murkier. India has bad debts the banks have bad debts of 10 lakh crore of rupees. So, on one side we have problems in economy, on the other side so much of money is stuck as bad loans. Do you think a way out now, do they have option in front of them, and they can solve the mess at the same time and revive economy also? What is the bigger problem they should focus on?
You very rightly said that the banking sector is stuck with a whole lot of asset quality problems, and which is inhibiting them from giving further loans. What needs to be done? One, of course, government has very clearly said that we need to consolidate the banks, merge them, but they've already taken steps. Prompt corrective action, for example, which has already been put in place, with certain banks have been prohibited from lending further. And then it really boils down to this, that investments have to pick. And now the new the bankruptcy code that has set in, that will help to resolve these issues. So the bad debt problems needs to be resolved very fast. That's very clear what you're saying. That's what even the planning commission, Niti Aayog, which met today, has also mentioned this. So I think everybody is focused on getting this issue of banks to lend again, to start lending again, because corporates really need to have the support of the banks so that they can in turn expand their activity. Because corporate lending has not picked up, it's only retail which is going on right now. So going forward, a few things which are set in place. One, of course, like you said, if the banks are able to start lending again, which will help private sector investment to pick up, but mainly it's the government sector investment which needs to lead the way forward.
And today was the first meeting of PM Economic Advisory Council. They met, they have had few deliberations, but they are also saying 80% of IMF forecast is wrong. What's your view on that? And do you think these PM, ESC and all of them, they will be able to bring the growth back to economy, and it's going to become an election issue also going forward next year?
You know, just see what the World Bank clearly says. World Bank, IMF both have said that GST is a game changer. They are very positive on GST because this is going to make this as a make the country as a whole one economy, bring the economy together, ease of doing business, and bring in the informal sector into the formal sector, which will expand the tax revenues, the tax base. So all this together is a big positive for the economy going forward. And so it's a temporary blip, as they themselves have conceded. So it's in this year, it's taking a little longer perhaps. Maybe one didn't expect that it would take about 2 quarters to set this in place. But it's just a question of time. Once we are through with this, another quarter or so of some amount of putting things in order, getting over the blips, then it will be much easier to do business, and this will be a big impetus to growth.
And so, and also, in the coming festival season, do you think things will become much more clearer? Because if demand is back and automobiles are getting sold and other industries the demand is good, production is good, then government can relax. Do you think then the coming festival season is going to be the litmus test of economy? Definitely, because demand, as you rightly said, demand is there. So consumer demand is there, and as you can see, even imports have gone up. During the slowdown, imports have gone up. What does this mean? It means that there is demand in the economy which is being met by demand from supplies from outside, and there's a supply chain disruption. Let's not forget, GST has brought about a disruption in the supply chain, which is now being met through higher imports. So once these glitches are set right, then economic growth will be back on track. All right, thank you so much for talking to us today and getting us all this important perspective. So clearly, India is in soup as far as the global forecasting is concerned, but there is a ray of hope as well. The coming festival season will be litmus test what happens to Indian economy. And staying with India, India's gold imports in September, they have jumped 31% from a year ago as jewelers increased their purchases ahead of a festival at the end of the month. India is world's second biggest market, and higher purchases by India could lend support to global prices that are trading near their highest level in a week. Well, this could also widen India's trade deficit. The higher imports may also widen deficit going forward on different issues. However, September figure was lower than monthly average for 2017 of 75 tons. Now, because buyers were wary of purchasing gold since purchases were counted under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act or PMLA beginning in August. The government on Friday withdrew the amendment that made jewelers subject to anti-money laundering legislation. Gold demand usually strengthens in the final quarter as Indians gears up for the wedding season as well as festivals such as Diwali and Dussehra. And let's talk about Indian markets. After opening in green, Sensex and Nifty both were up by 100 points this morning. They ended in red. Both Nifty and Sensex ended in red. Sensex was down by 90 points. So all the gains it had, the gains were eroded by the end of the day. While Nifty, the overall Nifty was also down by 32 points. So both Sensex and Nifty were down. If we talk about Indian markets, Asian markets over there, we can say that they have come under pressure. So overall, Asian markets are trading mixed. So not a good day for markets. In the beginning, they were up. By the end of the day, they had eroded all the gains. So not a good day for market at all. Indian markets opened in green with a good gain, but by the time they ended, they were already in red. Nifty was down 32 points, while Sensex was also down by 90 points.